Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie once said, and I quote, "So in our world, a man is confident, but a woman is arrogant. A man is uncompromising, but a woman is a ball breaker. A man is assertive, a woman is aggressive. A man is strategic, a woman is manipulative. A man is a leader, a woman is controlling. A man is authoritative, a woman is annoying." So the characteristic of the behavior is the same. What is different is the sex. And based on the sex, the world makes assumptions about us and the world treats us differently, unquote. I am Donna Gamadam, founder of #SheIsNotInvincible. First things first, Happy Women's Month. And welcome to this Q&A where we are going to discuss all things women as well as current issues, and we are going to get to know our special guest a little bit more. In our presence today, we have a very young lady who before her appointment was a youth activist who advocated for issues around gender, children's rights, sustainable development, as well as youth unemployment. She was also the Deputy Speaker of the Youth Parliament of the Republic of Namibia, as well as the Junior Mayor for the city of Windhoek, amongst other roles. She is a LLB Honours degree holder, and she also holds a diploma in business management, as well as African feminism and gender studies. Today in our midst, we have a very special young lady who I regard as a powerhouse and a force to be reckoned with. Ladies and gentlemen, the Deputy Minister of Information and Communication Technology, Honorable Emma Theofelus. So Honorable Emma, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, Donna. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Today I really cannot complain because I'm sitting in the presence of someone of your caliber.
Thank
so
you.
Today I'm just going to ask, listen, and I'm going to learn today.
Okay.
So we're going to get straight into this, and we're going to start off with our first question. As the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. Now, being the Deputy Minister of Information and Communication Technology must be exhausting, not to mention the added-on pressure of being the second youngest Parliament member. Thus, we want to know what a day in the life of Emma Theofelus was like, compared to you being Honorable Emma Theofelus right now.
Okay. Well, I don't see it as very different because much of the work I'm doing now, I used to do quite a little bit before I was Deputy Minister and Member of Parliament. Like you said, I was Deputy Speaker of the Youth Parliament that really looked at parliamentary issues at the youth level, and Junior Mayor and a youth activist. The only difference is that now I hold an office. I get into a lot of more meetings that make decisions about technology and ICTs in general. But I still try to keep issues that continue to drive me and that I'm passionate about. Just yesterday, I went to visit an agricultural project that is in an urban setting, one that caters for homeless children, gives them shelter and food, but also allows young people to gain the experience to be able to grow their own food. So much of the work I do now is complementary of the work I used to do before I was Deputy Minister. So nothing really majorly has changed in my life at this moment between the Emma and the Honourable Emma, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. So moving on to our second question, Honourable Emma. I think with regards to this pandemic, it hit us unexpectedly, I think. Not only our country, but countries across the globe.
Yes.
So my question to you is, what has the pandemic taught you as an individual?
Well, as an ordinary Namibian, it really taught me that we need each other more than we think. The support people were able to give one another and to just come out and want to help was a sign that we can do more than just speak. We can actually put actions to our words. But as a government representative and as someone who, like you said, with great power comes responsibility. When I was appointed, COVID had only reached our shores a week before, and I was now thrust in this position where I needed to think really hard on how I could navigate this new role, but also look at how, at the time when the country is really in need, I can be of assistance wherever I can. And I think that's what COVID-19 taught me, that so much can happen in a short period of time if you concentrate on it and want it to happen, and rally others that might think they don't have the resources or the capabilities and push them to show up and do it. So that, of course, came with the COVID-19 Communication Center being set up, that is still ongoing, and that really taught me that we need each other more than we think, and that we have better capabilities than we can believe in ourselves. We just need to pull up our socks and actually do it, because in a very short time, challenges are there, but opportunities also popped up, and I think both can coexist. What we do with them is what really matters.
So, Honorable Emma, you just mentioned a COVID center.
Yes.
Does the Deputy Minister, the Minister of Information and Communication Technology, separately, is this a office or a center separate for them, or are you working with the Office of the Minister of Health?
Yes, no, it's a entity run by MICT, but it's working directly with the Ministry of Health, because they are sort of the custodian of this health crisis that we're in now. I mean, anything that happens on their end, we just channel the communication. We also expanded it a little bit to look at the holistic impact of COVID-19 in the country, and that's why we really got all the other ministries and any stakeholder really. We had private companies come on, we had retailers, labor organizations, domestic workers. But the point is, for us to indicate that it's not just government's role to fight COVID-19. Everyone is battling it. What we do together is what matters. And that is why a few weeks ago, my minister announced as a cabinet decision that cabinet has decided to make it a permanent structure as a government information center. Because with COVID, you saw that with the lack of communication and lack of information, fake news, misinformation, disinformation creeps in. And that could have life-threatening consequences on people's livelihoods and lives. So it really shows that communication needs to be valuable, needs to be authentic, and it needs to be verified and credible at all instances for people to use it wisely. And coincidentally, we recently also tabled the Access to Information Bill in Parliament as a ministry, and that will be able to strengthen the right to access to information, because they say knowledge is power.
Yes.
And information goes a long way to transform people's lives. And that's what I've always believed. If you don't know that there's a scholarship somewhere, even if you have the capabilities, and you would have probably become number one, if you don't know about it, that's a missed opportunity. So I really believe in the power of information, and I'm so glad government at this point, through COVID-19, has seen that information is something we need to commit to try as an aspect to improve Namibians' lives.
I see. Honorable Emma, moving on to our next question.
Okay.
We are going to focus on current issues right now.
All right.
I'm not afraid to say I'm a feminist. I'm not shy to say I'm a feminist, because I am a feminist. I think what I've realized, though, is that whenever I publicly say I'm a feminist, men tend to raise their eyebrows. I think because we've been raised in a society where feminists are deemed as individuals that are against men. But in actual fact, we are not individuals that are against men. We are just individuals that are advocating for, the equal rights, the equal opportunities, the equal platforms, for both genders. So my question to you is, you have a diploma in African feminism and gender studies. What do you define feminism as, and do you regard yourself as one?
So let's just start off the bat. Yes, I do consider myself a feminist. I mean, I took this course while I was still pursuing my LLB. And I took it particularly because an opportunity was presented for me to do this course for free. I had an option between policy and trade. And then I saw this African feminism and gender studies. And I said, finally, I cannot depend on my knowledge that I've acquired myself through the internet or reading books. I can actually do a course to understand the different strains and streams of feminism, what it means. But in particular, African feminism. When you're an African woman and you call yourself a feminist, what lessons can I learn from those that have come before us? So yes, I am a feminist, and I would define, or I see feminism as simply an advocacy for women's rights and the equality of the sexes. I think the reason why, and I'm speaking to what you said earlier, that why feminism is misunderstood is because it is a ground-shaking philosophy. It's trying to break down barriers that exist. Someone in their comfort zone, and you try to pull the mat underneath them, they're going to want to fight you, and they're going to want to resist that new change because it threatens their normality. But the truth is, this normal that we're in cannot go on. It's not sustainable. It's not economically viable. It's risking women's lives. So I think the misunderstanding of feminism is deliberate. I think there's so much information out there for one to understand
Yes.
why feminism exists and why people such as you and me subscribe to the idea of feminism, and it's because it's a lived experience. I don't think, for example, one has to walk through a fire to feel someone who has walked through a fire to say, oh, now I understand that walking through a fire is difficult. Issues of empathy, one simply understanding the injustices that exist should make anyone understand, male or female, where feminism is such an integral part of the new change we want to have. So I think, yeah, feminism is here to stay. As long as injustices against women and the girl child continue, no one can expect us to keep quiet, because then it would mean that we're defeated before we even start. And you know, when I was doing the course, I learned about female warriors in much of Africa. I think you saw, for example, the Black Panther movie that was highlighted, because that is truly our history. And I was so saddened that I only got a deeper understanding of those female warriors and how strong and admirable they were through a course that, had I not taken, I wouldn't have stumbled upon it anyway. So it's really that thing of, we need to understand and accept that female power has always been there. It has, of course, had its ups and downs because of how patriarchy functions in society and how it has become systematic in everything in our lives. However, feminism continues to be a reality, and it's just an advocacy for equal rights and fairness and balancing of scales. And anyone who's against that really is being disingenuous.
As I'm seated here today, I'm not talking, for myself, but I'm talking on behalf of, girls all over the country. So if it means I tirelessly have to work to make sure that, through this project, to make sure that young women across the country get access, to sanitary pads, if it means I have to have sleepless nights to make sure that the young women that come after me do not have to experience what I've experienced, then I will. Because when my mom was retrenched, my aunt had to step in, like any other sister would. But I think, while I'm advocating for, sanitary pads and, topics around menstruation and so forth, I think the government also has to meet me halfway. And our country is a developing country, yes. Our country is not a first world country, yes. But I've noticed that our country makes condoms freely and readily available across the country, while sanitary pads are not. And I think sanitary pads, that is a basic necessity. A lot of young women unfortunately cannot, afford. So my question to you, Honorable Emma, is, do you think that the government has, failed the girl child in that aspect somehow?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, the responsibility cannot rest on government only. And I want to take a few steps back. I think women's health issues are not always as openly discussed as they should be, and therefore they do not get the necessary attention they should. They don't get the necessary support for young women and women in general that they should. So that is already a barrier, a first-time barrier already. Whether it's cultural restrictions or religious restrictions, menstruation being seen as a taboo topic to talk about. I mean, some girls have even experienced menstruation as such a surprise because it's not spoken about as something that can be seen as natural and it happens naturally. So I think that's the first step. And then the second step is whose responsibility is it then to ensure every girl child is catered for this natural occurrence in their life as they become a teenager in puberty? I think it's society's responsibility, it's government's responsibility, and it's a responsibility you took upon yourself as well because you saw the gaps that exist. So coming off that, imagine if our society was, and let me quickly link it to when you speak about condoms becoming free was not always the case. That happened because we're dealing with the HIV and AIDS pandemic that was claiming people's lives, people's livelihoods, which was basically a country in crisis. And then that extreme step was taken to say, okay, then let's make condoms free. Perhaps people will use them and not put their lives and health at risk. So at least there's a health element relation between the two. That one, of course, is risky, but the other also, which is menstrual health, and period poverty in itself has economical consequences, just like HIV and AIDS does. Like the productivity of individuals goes down, you're losing valuable skills and so on. A girl child not going to school 5 times a month because she has to wait at home until her menstruation period is over has economical disadvantages and so on. So we can draw the links. But to say government has failed, maybe not. I think government has not been proactive in creating an enabling environment for everyone to understand the importance of menstrual health and what that has as an impact on the girl child and on the woman and female of our society. And that's why I think projects such as yours, such as those that make reusable pads, some advocating, which I fully agree with, for all female, it's just not sanitary pads, but basically all female products
yes,
to not have a tax carrying levy on it. Because what it means is if there is a product used by both women and men, but because the women's product has, because of biology, it's nothing really else, because of biology, it gets an extra charge, and that's not fair because it's something that we don't choose. We choose not to menstruate, but it happens. So safeguards need to be put in place, and I fully agree with you. But for example, and I think this is also something I've thought about really, and I've chatted with people before to say, let's say if we focus only on school-going children, that still leaves a vacuum of young women that either dropped out of school or do not go to school at all, women that are right out of school but are in between, like, let's say improving their grades or not going to university yet, or even those that make it to university and so on. So there's a plethora of gaps in which many young girls can fall into. So I do believe there should be a systemic approach to it. Society also needs to open about having such conversations, but I also agree policy and laws could go a long way in trying to balance those scales, so less and less women have a situation where they can access basic necessities such as menstrual pads. So I do think it's a role play for all of us to have private, government, society, individuals, a mother and father in the home, an aunt, a guardian, a teacher in the school that's teaching the menstrual cycle. All of us need to have concerted efforts because one can pull on this side and improve, but if this is lacking, it might not get the results we wanted to have.
I see.
Yeah.
I get what you're trying to say, Honorable.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to make use of this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to thank my aunt.
Mm-hmm.
She's just an ordinary clerk at NAMPost in Marienthal, and I don't know if you're going to see this, but I'm sure you're going to see this. I want to thank you that you stepped in for my mom. I want to thank you that you never made me worry where my next sanitary pad was going to come from, and that you always made sure that I stayed in school when I was on my period. Not only my aunt, but there are so many other women that I have to thank. If, whoever you are, if you're going to see this, if you have someone that you'd like to thank, please like, share, and comment and let us know who you'd like to thank. Okay, so moving on Honorable Emma, while we are still busy with this topic, what do you think we can do to remove the negative stigma associated with menstruation and sanitary pads in society?
I think we need to talk about it more. The conversation really needs to elevate to the children, the young girls, the women, the older women who unfortunately grew up in a time where they couldn't talk about this. And really a person is only a result of the conditioned environment they grew up with. So I think conversations need to go on and need to continuously happen to ensure that everyone understands that it's a necessity. It's not a choice. It's not something that comes and goes as you would choose and like it for it to happen. It's something natural, and all of us need to embrace it. I mean, this is where generally life begins, if you think about it in that way. The menstrual cycle is part of a life-making process. So it's something as natural as sunlight, and that's why I think the conversation needs to start in our churches, in our homes, in our schools, because period poverty is real, and it's holding back the girl child.
Yes, ma'am. I agree. I think we should normalize conversations around menstruation and so forth. And I think if we do that, then it won't be a taboo subject, within society anymore. I don't know whether you are aware of the gallows, which were up in Handisby. But the following quote was taken as to why the gallows were put up. Eventually, in 1978, two of the first permanent residents of Handisby, Frank Atkinson and Willie Sillis, who were respectively settled here in 1969 and 1971, fixed an old tree trunk, with a rope and noose as a friendly but firm warning to keep the town and the beach clean. Now, my question to you, Honorable, is, in your opinion, do you think that after so many years of independence that this is justified, or it is justified that these gallows are still up? Firstly, and secondly, in your opinion, do you think the presence of these gallows in such a public display oppress people of color?
Yeah, I think, and this is a conversation that's really gone global, with statues, and it's something that is not new to the city of Windhoek, for example, our country, because we've had statues being removed before. We've had people advocate for the renaming of streets because of the trauma that still perpetuates from colonialism and oppression. So I wouldn't say it's justified, no. But it just also still shows that we still remain a society that still needs to have a conversation about our racial history, a racially divided society. I've listened to speakers before who say many people still have not accepted that we're an independent country, and that we are people the same, we're equal the same. I mean, and this is why black women are seen as having a double injustice. Because first, you're not only a black, but you're a black woman, because inequality in itself, whether racially or gender, subscribes to the same notion that one believes they're better than the other, and that's the same with race. So no, I don't think the gallows are justified to be up. Street names and statues, there needs to be a reform around the whole system, but we also need to get deep into the fabric of our society. How, for example, the inequalities in the economy are still perpetuated by a racially divided class. People of a certain color still hold majority of the resources that they benefited of oppression and colonialism. And I think that conversation, as you see with the land discussions and the economic inequalities discussion, keeps on happening. More and more of it is being exposed, and the gallows is just an example of it. People actually saying, but look, we have moved past that. We want a new future, and this represents the old Namibia, and we don't want any of that. We don't want to see it. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to experience it. So I do feel it does revoke a bit of post-traumatic trauma for anyone that lived in an oppressive Namibia, but also me and you who are descendants of those that were oppressed during the time. We can feel it in the way we live, in the way it exists, and I do agree that reforms need to happen in that area.
Looking at the specific situation, not only at the Rejoice's situation, but women across the country who are, have lost their lives as a result of these predators. Do you think that we as the society, the government, or just each and every one of us have failed our Namibian women in getting the justice that they deserve, and also putting an end to gender-based violence? Thus, what can we do to make it better, or to make it a safer place for women of our country?
Yeah. Oh, gender-based violence is one of those so many discussions about what could be the root cause. What's causing all of this? What's driving especially men to want to harm another human being based on their gender? And a lot has been spoken about power dynamics, inequality in relationships, intergenerational relationships that have power struggles, so many things. A culture of violence, perhaps. A brutal past that we have not come to terms with, perhaps. All of that. And one wonders still, how then can we have a solution for all of these? Because as you can see, it's a plethora of things at play, fueling gender-based violence. I think much has been done. I'm a lawyer by profession, and I've seen that the courts are not merciful in keeping those accountable for killing women, abusing women, showing any violent behavior towards women. The law has, perhaps not as fast as we'd like it to be, but justice is usually served at the end of every trial. I think we need to confront ourselves as citizens that we can have in our homesteads, in our neighborhoods, in our villages, women being beaten or being put at risk, and we're quiet about it and not able to report it because there is perhaps a culture of not to get involved in people's business. But when you weigh that up against someone's life, I think it's a non-starter issue. So I do think, I don't know how many more conversations we can have, how many more dialogues we can have. But I have hope that perhaps we need to start with raising our boy child and our girl child to move away from a violent culture, violent understanding, that solutions and I guess conflicts can only be solved by violence, perhaps, because it can easily escalate. Issues of maybe substance abuse could be a contributing factor. But to be quite honest, it's unacceptable at the rate at which gender-based violence is going. And you can see I'm struggling to come up with something that would, like a wand to basically say, just apply this and gender-based violence can be gone. Unfortunately, that is not possible. It's a complex issue that perhaps has manifested and infested the fabric of our society for over a long time. And now it will take a very long time as well to unravel it out and bring it to the fore and throw it away. So it's really, I guess, consistently applying the law, consistently speaking up about it, consistently holding perpetrators accountable, consistently supporting and protecting women at any cost possible against violence. Perhaps then we can see strides, or we can see results of what we are doing. But I think that would require a team effort, society, government, private sector, all of us, girl, boy, women, men, all of us taking a stand, just like we took a stand against HIV and AIDS, TB, and so many others. I think using that approach to consistently advocate against violence as this invisible enemy needs to be something we all have at the back of our mind wherever we go, and carry it with us to try to avoid it and to prevent it, and if it happens, hold those accountable for it. I think justice must prevail at the end of the day, but I would rather have 0 cases of gender-based violence than 50 perpetrators having violated women or children at the end of the day.
Okay, Honorable Emma, since we're busy with this issue now, I wanted to ask you, rapists, I like to refer to them as rapists because
they are rapists.
Yes, I'd like to refer to them as rapists. With regards to like punishment and all that, Don't you think we have to do like something with regards to how rapists are punished? For example, within our country, since you said, I've mentioned also that you are honest, LLB honors degree holder. Don't you think that we need to look at or make a change with regards to how rapists are punished? Don't you think we should add more years, or what do you think we can do to?
Well, the judiciary, I think, the judiciary is working in the ambit of our criminal justice system works in this way. It's not punitive. It's not meant to necessarily punish someone for the rest of their life. It's aimed at reforming people. It's meant to get someone into prison because they are a danger to society now, remove them out of society. And that's why the death penalty, for example, has no place in our country, because the idea is everyone is valuable at the end of the day. They have rights and responsibilities like any other. The problem comes in when they overstep over someone's right, the right to life, and they take someone's right or violate someone's bodily integrity and dignity. When they take that right away, then the state has the right to also take away their right to liberty and so on. So it's like sort of a give and take system. So this person is taken out of society because they are a danger to society. But what the state wants is for this person to come out reformed, different, rehabilitated, so they can come back into society. We have seen it with, people who are ex-prisoners who come and, say that really circumstances in their lives probably was the fueling factor to them becoming a thief and whatsoever. But now they got a chance to reform their life inside bars and have come out to be a productive citizen. Because, mind you, when they're in this correctional facilities, and they're not called prisons anymore, correctional facilities, it's a cost to me and you as a taxpayer to ensure that they are fed. I mean, we cannot let them just die in there. They're human beings. So it's a reform. So the judiciary system, I think, is trying to balance that, to say that, look, what you have done is wrong. And you need, and for the victim or the victim's family to feel like you are being held accountable for what you have done. You are taken away for quite a while. But while you are in there, we still want you back in society and can be a positive impact. Because what's the point of you going in there forever and not coming back to maybe come right your wrongs in person? Because a rape victim would tell you that someone going to jail would be justice. And I've worked with rape victims at the Regain Trust in the past. But what that violation never really goes away, regardless of what happens to this person, whether they lose their life, whether they're incarcerated for a while, whatever it may be. The fact remains, the violation has happened and it cannot be reversed. But what my ideal world would be, this person can truly and deeply in their heart see what they have done wrong and come back in their society and be a soldier to protect women and children against rape, for example, or violence, for example. For me, then it means we are truly making the strides, sort of like a sandwiching the problem and extinguishing it forever. Those that have reformed to openly talk about what led them to do that, so that we're able to raise our boy child and whoever to avoid that and to understand that it's wrong, so that we're able to arrest the issue in as quickly as possible. And at the rate it's going, it seems we're not making so much progress. And that's why perhaps I'm thinking in my mind a different approach needs to happen, that we really need to rehabilitate those that have done wrong, have them come back in society and dedicate the rest of their lives to ensure no woman gets raped ever again in this country. That is really my thinking. But that is the hope, that one day we get to zero. But how we get there, we need to find avenues. And that's why the justice system really needs to be reformative. Someone needs to reform, or they would have basically done a wrong that no matter how many years they get in jail, which they should rightly deserve to because they have done wrong, what happens out there continues.
Honorable Emma, in the current national debate exploring legalization of abortion in Namibia, apart from other views and arguments already asserted on social media and other platforms, Namibian women have come forth because we are the ones carrying these offsprings, rather, let me put it that way. And Namibian women have been very vocal about, the legalization of abortion. You as a 24-year-old Namibian young woman, are you pro-life? Are you pro-choice? And, what is the reason behind you being pro-life or pro-choice?
Yeah. I think I want to, the conversation I've been following is quite interesting, whether from those who are pro-life or pro-choice. But even the terms themselves don't really sit well with me, because when you say someone is pro-choice and the opposite of that is pro-life, you're making it seem like those who are pro-choice are not pro-life. They're pro-life. So the terminology used between those who want abortion to be legalized or not legalized is for me not a correct description of those who are either pro or against abortion. But I want to also then bring the conversation in context, and I do this because a motion was tabled in Parliament, where one of the MPs really looked at whether or not to legalize abortion, and what would that mean for our society. I think, one, we do not have enough data around what's currently happening now. We have heard previous ministers of health give reports of, or even table motions. I mean, Dr. Libertina Madila tabled the motion in Parliament before. Reports about abortions happening regardless of it being not legal. And of course, there are exceptions to the rule in situations of rape and health complications and so on. However, one then needs to take a step back as to what is currently happening now and why is it happening. We are a country that has health provisions for contraceptives for young women, for example. But unfortunately, those are not widely available, and they're also not easily accessible. There's a cost implication to it, and there are also a lot of cultural and religious barriers to one even accessing contraception. That would be, for example, a first step to then say, okay, if you're not legalizing abortion, what could be the alternative to that, whether it's strengthening those current measures put in place. And then further, you look at also, for example, the reality that CSE in schools is not trickled down to the home. And it's also getting a lot of resistance from groups around actually comprehensive sexuality education. We are human beings. We have a biology attached to us. That conversation needs to happen at some point in every person's life. And the earlier we can have it in children's lives, the earlier we can limit teenage pregnancies that have adverse effects, economical impacts on the lives of these young women and their children and so on. So I think the matter shouldn't be pro-life or pro-choice. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at what is happening now and then see and come to a consensus and a common ground to say, okay, women are risking their lives having backdoor abortions. What is the problem there? Is it lack of family planning, lack of contraceptives, lack of education? What is it? And let's arrest it, because this is a divisive issue in society. And I think everyone, or not everyone, most that I have seen engaging or I've engaged with are very strong about their own feelings and strong about their own perceptions. But we must have an open mind to then say, if we really care about our women and children that are alive today, young women that are risking their lives having backdoor abortions, not having access to contraceptives, let's talk about their health. And I think that's why this should be a health discussion, not any other discussion. It should be a health discussion, and we should look at it from a health perspective to then see what is in the best interest of those who are alive today, being the young women and women generally who could be at risk of health complications when the realities of today are backdoor abortions and lack of access to contraceptives and other family planning solutions, so that their life is better. The truth is, many women are sitting with a situation where they need to care for children themselves, are in a situation where, because of relationship power dynamics, cannot choose when to have children or how many to have, and those go deeply into cultural norms and influences, and even religious ones. So we need to break down some of those and lay them on the table and discuss honestly about them, and then we can then decide whether to legalize abortion or not.
Okay, Honorable Emma. Excluding victims of rape now, a lot of women, like I've said, have been very vocal about this issue. Do you think men should also somewhat have a say with regards to this issue, because they also contribute towards the pregnancy, or women getting pregnant?
Yeah, I think, to be quite honest, and after I did my course, I was trying to find laws that sort of tell men what to do with their bodies, and I couldn't find really any. So for me, that's already an indication that laws exist for women on whether it's to legalize abortion or not. It's telling basically women what to do with their bodies and so on. So I do think it should be a primarily women issue, women of childbearing age, for example. But I don't think we should exclude the male participation in it. No. But I think it primarily shouldn't steer away from women and young women and let them, talk about their reality, because it's a lived experience. Men can bring their support and their empathy and understanding, but women should be the primary ones to talk about what affects them in their lives.
After this year's new cabinet announcement, it was established that 46% of the Namibian parliament consists of women, and Namibia, together with South Africa, are tied up for the highest representation of women in parliament in the SADC region. Now, my question to you, Honorable Emma, is, one cannot discredit the fact that Namibia has come a long way in terms of a gender-equal parliament, yet we still have quite a way to go. Although the parliament seems to be getting the idea of what a gender-equal space should be, in your opinion, do you believe that we as a country, are in a space where we can call ourselves a country with full gender equality and equity? Please do take into consideration that a lot of people don't know that there's a difference between gender equality and equity.
Yeah. I think any country in the world cannot say they are there yet, because it needs to become an integral thing in society, that equality of the sexes. And I know you asked about parliament and government. I think there we have seen results. Where I've not seen results is in the private sector. For example, how many female CEOs do we have, and how long do they last in those positions? How many female board members do we have? How many female lawyers in senior positions do we have? Architects in senior positions? You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Parliament is just one entity. The cabinet is just one entity. The real power is in the companies that run the economy, in the other structural sectors that contribute to the country's running. So if we can normalize and equate parliament to those and say, okay, if we have a 46 representation percent in every company, because the truth is women are a larger population majority in this country. We're over 51%. So one would ideally want that represented across the board everywhere, in government, in private sector, everywhere. But I think we're doing more progress in government than in the private sector, and I think that's where our attention needs to be, because government is a smaller space. I mean, there are only 108 parliamentarians in total that can be accommodated as per current law. So if we have only 108 parliamentarians, let's say ideally who are all women, or 50% are women, what about in other key parts of society? So in the church, in NGOs, in companies, we need that same philosophy happening everywhere. Only then we can see change. Because you can have, let's say, 70% of parliamentarians who are female, but if there are not as many females in management of great companies that change the lives of ordinary Namibians on a day-to-day business, we won't see the results we want to have. So I do think the shift should be towards the private sector and the everyday fabric. The church, I want to see more female pastors. I want who can relate to their congregants who are anyway majority women, and so on. So truly, I think it should be across the board. But I do think we're doing well. I think even with the universities, over the past few years, more graduates are female more than male. But that's not the idea that they become more. It's the point is that now they're catching up.
Yes.
We are catching up as women. We have been, sidelined for so long. I like to make a comparison between race and gender or sex, because it really shows that they're polar parallels. Because if black people can say, but it took 2 years to be oppressed, surely it will take more than that to rectify, to balance the scale again. Same with women. It took a long time, and some oppression still exists today. At some point, when the male race is here, we need to grow faster to catch up. So that's the thinking, and I hope everyone would have that same understanding, that we are not saying equality and equity is advocating for women to surpass. We are saying we need to balance the scales. It just means one has to go faster to catch up than the other. And I think the conversation needs to really go about in all sectors of society. So we bring a balancing of the sexes, and that equality hopefully translates into equity. Yeah.
Now you know what the difference is between gender equality and equity. If there are some of you out there who might not have known, unfortunately we've come to the last question for today. Very excited for this one.
Okay.
Couldn't even sleep for this one.
I'm listening.
I was the head girl of Marienthal High last year, and I was speaking to an individual. I will never forget this day. I was sitting in the office before you get to the principal's office, the reception, and we were talking about, I think, our views regarding, like I say, gender equality and equity and so forth. And then this guy had the audacity to say that Namibia, we as a country, we know Namibians shouldn't allow women to take over one day. So my question to you today, Honorable Emma, is while we are on the topic of government and gender equality, Namibia has been independent for 30 years, and we've had 3 presidents so far, of which all of them have served second terms. The current president is busy serving his second term. Who have each deserved, like I said, at least served 2 terms. Sorry. In your opinion, do you think it is time to get a female president so that we can see what a woman can bring to the table?
I think it can happen. I mean, I don't want to compare our country to any. I mean, we've done way better than so many countries that have been independent for years. Look at America, for example. They're at their 45th president, if I'm correct. And of all the 45 presidents, none were female. And they are one of the considered most liberal and democratic countries in the world. So I'm not saying we should follow that route and wait until that long. I'm just saying society needs to organically be ready for a female president. Because in my experience, when people are not ready for a female leader to lead, they get a lot of pushback, and they have to work twice as hard, which is not fair, in my opinion. But I'm not saying we're not ready either. I'm just saying that, for example, we have our first female prime minister, and it would almost feel like it's not an event. It is an event, but what I'm trying to say is, it is so organic. It is so accepted now that a prime minister can be female and can carry up to the task like any other male prime ministers before her. So that's really something commendable. So whether or not we are ready for a female president, maybe not. Depends on the electorate, depends on any female that wants to. But in our last election, we had a female presidential candidate. I don't think she did any bad. She did well. It was brave of her as a first female presidential candidate. And I think it just really shows that, I mean, she didn't get 0 votes. She got votes.
Yeah.
It just shows that society will need to organically accept that a female could be a president, just like we have a prime minister, just like at some point ministers, we're not females, mostly men and so on. So organically, but that's the journey in which women do need to take. And hopefully, and that's why I say men are and should be our partners in this, because most of the pushback does come from men and some women, as of course, but it's because of the systemic patriarchal society we live in that creates all these very difficult situations for women to lead. But I think at some point one has to break the glass ceiling and let others take over, and I think it's possible.
Okay. I really, honestly, I cannot wait. I think the day we have a female again, that's going to, after 5 years, if we have a female again, hopefully, let's hope and pray. I'm not going to sleep. It's time, Honorable Emma, it's time. I think it's time. But unfortunately, we have come to the end of this Q&A session. Honorable Emma, do you have any advice for young women across the country?
Well, I think my advice is we are capable beyond measure. We should support strong, ambitious, and valued women. Let us be them. Let us be proud of them. Let us support them. And the world over and over has shown that women are great leaders. Even this pandemic has exposed that women are great leaders. The world needs you as the young girl who is 13 years old and don't know what you're going to do in the next 5 to 10, 15 years, to discover your purpose and passion and work at it, regardless of anything that comes your way, because this world needs you. This world will need you now. It needs you in 10 years' time. It needs you in 20 years' time. That's the only way we're going to survive this. So I wish you all the best.
Honorable Emma, I would like to personally thank you for making the effort to even sit down with me. This goes to every girl child across the country. I've had so many people, and I still do come across a lot of people that tell me that my dreams are too big. When you see this video, and I hope wherever you are, I want to remind you that you are worthy, you matter, and you are capable. Thank you.